Hey, I'm Jason from Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm Rohan from New Jersey.
Okay, so based on the last few videos, we've learned a little more about nuclear weapons, but I'm still not totally sure how this is all relevant today. Am I missing something?
Well, nuclear policy still plays a significant role in international affairs today, especially in times of crisis. Although most may think of death and destruction when considering nuclear weapons, some believe that they have and may still act as a peacemaker.
A peacemaker? How can that be?
The idea has been heavily criticized, but the idea of nuclear deterrence has interestingly been discussed in both positive and negative lights.
Nuclear deterrence. I've heard of that before. Is that when a nation uses the threat of nuclear attack to dissuade another country from attacking first?
Put simply, yes. The idea of nuclear deterrence has arisen quite often since World War II. Back to the peacemaker idea. Some believe that deterrence has been successful in preventing large-scale war involving world powers. The threat of an impending nuclear attack has proven to be pretty effective in essentially forcing an enemy to reconsider their war plans.
So do those without the weapons just surrender? When did this happen?
When only one side has had an arsenal, the conflict has usually led to unilateral deterrence, in which one side forces the other to act according to their wishes by threat of a nuclear attack. The idea of nuclear threat was seen in action just 5 years after the attacks on Hiroshima in 1950, when President Truman hinted toward the possibility of using the bomb in the Korean War as an act by the United Nations. Nuclear threats were cast several more times in the coming years, notably near the end of the Korean War by President Eisenhower against the North Koreans and Chinese during Operation Desert Storm by President George H.W. Bush in Iraq, and more recently by George W. Bush as he regarded the issue in Iran.
Nuclear threat and unilateral deterrence? That doesn't sound like peacemaking at all.
Yeah, it really doesn't. But around the mid-1960s, as more superpowers began to develop arsenals of their own, nuclear threats began to shift towards mutual deterrence, a sort of stalemate in which both adversaries possess a nuclear arsenal.
So if both sides have nuclear weapons, why doesn't one just attack first?
That's because of a theory called mutually assured destruction. MAD, or mutually assured destruction, prevented nations with nuclear weapons from entering into large-scale conflict with each other because both sides understood that if they were to enter a nuclear war, neither side would be able to emerge without detrimental losses.
Oh, so that's why some think nuclear weapons can act as a peacemaker.
Yup, but you have to understand that this is simply a hypothesis that represents a minority of thinkers. Some believe mutual deterrence prevented the Soviet Union and United States from entering into physical war during the Cold War, but we can never really be sure.
That makes sense, but it seems to me like mutual deterrence is generally a good thing. Is there anything negative that comes from it?
Actually, yes. In order for deterrence to be effective, the superpowers knew that they needed to be able to survive a surprise attack and retaliate quickly, which led to the development famed nuclear triad. The triad enables three types of delivery: bombers, missiles, and submarines, and ensured that the attacked nation would be able to inflict high damage on the attacking nation if need be.
So, why was that a bad thing?
It depends how you look at it. Deterrence inevitably led to nations increasing their arsenals through this nuclear triad. From the perspective of the anti-nuclear movement, this increase in weapons was, of course, a bad thing.
Okay, that makes sense. You said earlier that this is relevant today too, right?
Yeah, I did. Since 9 countries maintain nuclear arsenals now, issues that arise among these nations usually have nuclear implications, as they are key aspects of these countries' militaries. A modern example can be seen in the conflict between Pakistan and India, two bordering nations that possess nuclear weapons. Since both regional and global catastrophe may stem from a nuclear war between the two countries, the conflict has become a great issue, and mutual deterrence may have played a role thus far in maintaining relative peace.
They would never enter into nuclear war though, because that would entail mutually assured destruction, right?
Hopefully not, because you're right, that would entail mutually assured destruction. Now you can see that deterrence is still relevant today, as nations continuing to maintain nuclear arsenals means that the threat of nuclear attack is always possible.
I'm sure that the anti-nuclear movement would support both sides reducing their weapon count, and the same for the other 7 countries.
Definitely, because reduction of nuclear arsenals would mean that it would be less likely for a country to be devastated by a nuclear attack or an accident.
An accident? That doesn't sound good.
Not at all. Since the first atomic bomb was built in the 1940s, there have been nuclear accidents around the world that have come close to being or have been deadly. They are not too popular as they've been fairly covered up, but they surely happened.
What? People died? Where? When? How?
On a few occasions, yes, there were deaths. Many of the accidents resulted in the loss of nuclear weaponry or material. But I can highlight some notable accidents. In 1961, a B-52's right wing broke down, causing 2 nuclear weapons that the bomber was holding to drop from the plane in North Carolina.
Wait, nuclear bombs were accidentally dropped in North Carolina?
Yup, but thankfully no deaths resulted. One of the bombs landed pretty safely with minimal damage. The second bomb, however, broke apart near a town called Goldsboro, and some of the uranium couldn't be recovered. Neither bomb caused a large explosion. 3 men aboard the bomber did die, however.
Oh gosh, there couldn't have been another accident though. This sounds dangerous.
Sadly, there were more. In 1966, another B-52 that was carrying 4 nuclear weapons was involved in an accident in Spain when it collided with another aircraft. 2 of the weapons were safely recovered from the sea and ground, but the other 2 bombs hit land and caused high non-nuclear explosives to detonate within the weapon. Radioactive material was released due to these detonations, and traces of contamination were examined decades later.
Now that definitely sounds dangerous.
Hold on, there's been worse. The infamous Damascus Titan missile explosion resulted in a sole casualty, but it struck fear in many across the nation for years later.
Well, what happened?
An airman repairman was doing maintenance on a Titan II ICBM, Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, an extremely lethal nuclear weapon, when he accidentally dropped a wrench socket 80 feet into the rocket's fuel tank. The socket pierced the tank and it began to leak. The complex was evacuated, but the missile later exploded while personnel were attempting to determine the status of the missile. Along with the sole casualty, 21 people were injured in the accident.
Oh no, I can't believe this all has happened. You don't think an accident could happen nowadays, though?
Well, just like all accidents, nobody knows if or when they'll come. Since nuclear weapons are now all over the world, the risk, of course, still exists.
I never realized that nuclear weapons were still this relevant to the present day.
As long as nuclear arsenals persist to exist, nuclear weaponry and policy will continue to be an important issue around the globe. And actually, nuclear issues may become increasingly relevant in the coming years, as ideas involving nuclear weapons, such as nuclear buildup, terrorism, and command and control have been heavily discussed lately.
Does that mean nuclear issues are becoming more significant? What could I possibly do about this?
You'll have to pay attention to the next couple of videos to find out.